Romans 14, King James Version. Him that is weak in the faith receiveth ye, but not to doubtful disputations. For one believeth that he may eat all things, another who is weak eateth herbs. Let him that eateth despise him that eateth not, and let not him which eateth not judge him that eateth, for God hath received him. Who art thou that judgest another man's servant? To his own master he standeth, or falleth. Yea, he shall be holden up, for God is able to make him stand. One man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. He that regardeth the day regardeth it unto the Lord, and he that regardeth not the day to the Lord, he doth not regard it. He that eateth, eateth to the Lord, for he giveth God thanks. And he that eateth not to the Lord, he eateth not, and giveth God thanks. For none of us liveth to himself, and no man dieth to himself. For whether we live unto the Lord, and whether we die unto the Lord. Whether we live therefore or die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ both died and rose and revived, and he might be the Lord both of the living and the dead. It was dead and the living. But why dost thou judge thy brother? Or why dost thou set at naught thy brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. For it is written, as I live, saith the Lord, let every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God. So then every one of us shall give account of himself to God. Let us not therefore judge one another anymore, but judge this rather, that no man put a stumbling block or an occasion to fall in his brother's way. I know and am persuaded by the Lord Jesus that there is nothing unclean of itself, but to him that esteemeth anything to be unclean, to him it is unclean. But if thy brother be grieved with thy meat, now walkest thou not charitably. Destroy not him with thy meat, for whom Christ died. Let not then your good be evil spoken of. For the kingdom of God is not meat and drink, but righteousness and peace and joy in the Holy Ghost. For he that in these things serveth Christ is acceptable to God and approved of men. Let us therefore follow after the things which make for peace, and things wherewith one may edify another. For meat destroy not the work of God. All things indeed are pure, but it is evil for that man who eateth with offense. It is good neither to eat flesh, nor to drink wine, nor anything whereby thy brother stumbleth, or is offended, or is made weak. Hast thou faith? Have it to thyself before God. Happy is he that condemneth not himself in that thing which he alloweth. And he that doubteth is damned if he eat, because he eateth not of faith. For whatsoever is not of faith is sin. Why do we as people fight with one another over such frivolous things? Why do we condemn one another? Why do we try to remove the speck out of our brother's eye when we have a beam in ours? What is it that causes us to project our shadow onto another? I love to talk about things that have been occurring in my own personal life. I like to talk about my experience so I can come from a place of authenticity. Just things that are on my mind and heart. Lately, there has been a lot of controversy circulating. People are divided more than united, as within, so without, right? So as I'm seeing this play out on the world stage, I too have been experiencing this in my own personal sphere. Some harsh judgments have been projected onto me lately. And let me just say, first and foremost, people have the free will to do so. And honestly, I thank them for it because it always gives me material to write about and to express. So now let me read from the book of Matthew, King James Version. So this is Matthew, verse 7, 1 through 3. Judge not that ye be not judged. For with what judgment ye judged, ye shall be judged. And with what measure ye meet, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Matthew, verse 7, 1 through 3, King James Version. If we look around, we can see that there has been a lot of judgment that has been cast down in this country, all over the world, as a matter of fact. People getting ripped from homes, people are dying. Online bullying is more, you know, it's everywhere. People casting stones onto their fellow man. So I guess what I'm getting at is, when was the last time that you've looked in the mirror? Before you go screaming injustice, sometimes it's good to take a look at your own actions. What's the beam in your eye preventing you from seeing before you go pointing out a beam in someone else's eye? It seems to me the order of the age is persecution of any given title that doesn't fit into the status quo. Whether you're a Buddhist, being targeted by corporate Christians, Hispanic, being hunted by ICE, or a girl who just reads tarot cards and studies astrology, being labeled a witch. Society in general seems to have their torches and pitchforks ready to go. And people may want to refer back to the verses I read in Matthew 7. Also, it's careful to take note and to be cautious of what you speak and chastise your fellow man for. People aren't aware of this, but words are a spell. That's why we call writing spelling. Everyone is doing their own form of witchcraft. You cast spells every day just with the words that you speak. I'm just going to leave that there. And this also leads me into talking about having the pleasure of meeting the Buddhist monks. Yes, I actually got to meet monks for the first time. They are actually doing a walk for peace via foot to Washington, D.C. They started out in Texas, and on their route through Georgia, I thought I would pay them a visit. I mean, let's just face it, who wouldn't want to meet some Buddhist monks? I mean, come on, man. That is a once in a lifetime deal, and I wasn't going to give it up. I don't know if any of you have ever watched the movie Little Buddha with Keanu Reeves. Then you know monks definitely have swag. They're awesome. If you haven't watched that movie, I suggest that you give it a watch. It's a really great movie. So getting back to me meeting the monks on their walk for peace, I arrived around 9 p.m. in a little town right outside of Athens, Georgia, to do a meet and greet with these wonderful monks. The energy felt amazing. Although I am a little disappointed that I did not get to meet their dog, Aloka. He actually wasn't there. But I wanted to put some video footage here so you can see and hear the message of peace on their walk to Washington, D.C.
But do not have an enemy. Because when we have an enemy, it's very difficult for us to move on to live. Because there are always obstacles. Always we have to protect ourselves, and always we have to worry. So if we don't have anybody to play with, it's always better just to be ourselves. Just to be ourselves and just practice to stay alone. Sometimes it's really good to give ourselves a space, right? To stay alone without anybody. Who's in here that already joined any type of retreat that you have to stay alone? Okay, a few. When we stay secluded, alone, we feel much better. That is a time for us to look back within. That is a time for us to heal ourselves, right? That is the time when we don't need to do anything. We let go of everything. Sometimes we should let ourselves have that chance to heal ourselves. Because we've been really busy with this in this life already. You don't need to travel, because traveling we also enjoy, right? But all those enjoyment are just also temporary. But then that also give us more attachment onto things. When we see things, when we hear things, we attach to those. But to give us a chance to take a retreat, any type of retreat that is secluded, that you alone, you don't have to talk, you don't have to see so many people, and just be yourself. That is the time when you can actually have a lot of time to look back within, to find yourself, because we've been lost in this delusion world. We have been lost so many times. We lost our way. And because of lost in our ways, we cannot find the way back. And that is why we suffer. So it's always best to love yourself, to care for yourself. Because in this world, nobody loves you more than yourself. Regardless that our lovers, our partners saying that I love you forever. But no, it's also temporary. We are also not perfect. We are here not to convert anybody. We are purely just walk, mindfully walk, just to bring the awareness of peace, hoping that everyone will just pause, will just stop for a moment and look back within, so we can find peace for ourselves. That's all. That is the only message that we brought with us. Peace is already been there with us for so long. It's just that I repeated many times that I said, because we are too busy, we cannot see it, we cannot find it. We locked it up already. And when we have free time, whenever we have free time, ask ourselves, when we have free time, what did we do? Either we go shopping, either we go hang out with friends, restaurant, bar, or traveling. That also not free time, because we are also busy, right? And let's say if we don't want to go anywhere because we are tired, you don't want to see anybody, you just want to be yourself, and you lock yourself in the house. What happened? Then now you have to fight with your mind. This is when you have to fight with the mind, because the mind is full of thoughts, one after another popping up, and then we stay in the house alone. This is when all kind of thought is popping up, because we always thinking of this and that. That is why when all those thoughts are popping up and overwhelmed us. And so we travel, we go out, we also suffer. And then we stay home and lock ourselves in the room, we also suffer. What can we do? What can we do? Well, there's a method. It's not for Buddhists, but it's for all beings. It's mindfulness.
ใส่ก็ร้ายหมด
Thank you.
อยู่ในความ
Thank you. I wanted to give you a small gift. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, as you can see, I did gift one of the monks one of my special crystals. I hope that he keeps it in his pocket for good luck. In return, I was gifted a bracelet to wear in remembrance to practice peace in this time of chaos, and I actually have it on right now. And I'm not going to remove it until it falls off. And so, at the beginning of this discussion, I mentioned persecution. And the persecution that these monks have had to go through along their walk for peace is really outrageous. I know that they specifically targeted the Bible Belt on their walk to spread a message with really out having to say anything. For someone to purposely and viciously target a monk, there must be some inner demons within that person. As the head monk spoke, the only fight is literally with ourselves. And for it to irritate someone's soul so badly that these monks are walking in peace is literally a testimony in itself. Hence, this is the very reason they are walking, to prove a point. And if you're still enough and observant enough and you are rooted in the spirit, you can really see the point that they are trying to convey. These monks, as I stated, they started in Texas. I don't know where they are currently at in their route to Washington, D.C., but these monks have literally been hit by a car on purpose. And due to one of these, I forgot the monk's name, one of the monks had to get his leg amputated. Their dog, Aloka, has been hit by a car. People have thrown broken glass on the street in front of their path. This happened in Alabama. Corporate Christian churches have rallied like bullies around these monks, screaming in megaphones that they are demon possessed and will burn in hell, trying to talk over the monks during one of their speeches. You can actually watch all of this on TikTok if you would like. I wanted to show some footage on this, but didn't want to waste energy on negativity or ignorance. But I really, I really am embarrassed to be from the Bible Belt, really, let alone this country. And honestly, that's one of the big reasons why I have chosen solitude for my life these last few years. Unfortunately, in this time, you are met with ignorance when you talk or practice anything out of the realm of organized religion. People will metaphorically burn you at the stake or nail you to a cross. Let's be honest, people fear what they do not understand. I used to be one of those people way back. And let's be honest, they nailed Yeshua to a cross all because they feared what they could not comprehend. And that's one reason why Yeshua had a very, very small circle. Yet, even out of that small circle, he was still betrayed. So this goes back to the monk's speech that I'm about to go reference back to the monk's speech that I played for you, where he talks about isolation sometimes is the only way some people can get inner peace. The only way that you can hear the inner small voice in this noisy, chaotic world at this time. And this actually gets into the meat of our discussion today, where I talk about isolation can be sacred initiation. So, Buddhist monks live in isolation, and there's a reason for that. And many people sometimes see isolation as punishment or a curse, but a lot of the time it's actually an initiation that was orchestrated by the universe itself. As we can see across time, every mystic, prophet, healer, or awakened soul has passed through a wilderness phase, an isolation phase. And this was not for punishment. This was preparation. Jesus, 40 days, 40 nights in the wilderness. Even out of that, he did live basically a solitary life. The desert, the cave, the mountain, the monastery. These are not symbols of abandonment. They are symbols of refinement, places where the noise of the world falls away and the soul can finally be confronted with itself. And isolation is where the false self can only begin to collapse. So when the external world is stripped back, when relationships dissolve, identities fall apart, and familiar roles no longer fit, what remains can feel terrifying to a lot of people. We often mistake this unraveling for failure. We tell ourselves we are broken, behind, or losing everything. But the truth is, this is where our false masks loosen their grip. This is where the ego, no longer reinforced by validation or distraction, begins to soften. And in that softening, something truer is able to emerge. The true self does not announce itself loudly. It does not compete for attention. It waits. It waits beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, beneath the personas we built to survive. And it can only be heard when life grows quiet enough for us to actually listen. The universe does not isolate us to hurt us. It isolates us to reveal to us, to speak to us. When everything familiar is removed, we are forced inward, forced to sit with our thoughts, our wounds, our patterns, our traumas, our addictions, our truth, forced to hear that inner voice we spent years trying to drown out. This voice does not speak in fear or urgency. It speaks calmly, clearly, and without coercion. It tells us what is real, what is aligned, and what must be released, and what must be reclaimed. Isolation is not the absence of love, it is the redirection of love from the outside back to source within. And while it may feel lonely, confusing, it feels like you're being punished or unbearable, that season that you go through, it carries a very sacred intelligence. It is shaping discernment. It is building inner authority. It is teaching us how to stand alone without being empty, how to be rooted without being rigid. This is not where you disappear. This is where you are initiated. So when I look back on my journey about 3 or 4 years ago, when I was descending into the cave, I did not understand this at all at first. And when my life actually began to crumble, when my relationships fell away with a lot of people, when familiar structures collapsed in my life, when my own family members betrayed me, when the world around me grew very uncomfortably quiet, I didn't see initiation at all. When I first started going through this, I saw loss. I felt isolated. I felt like I was being punished. I wondered what I had done wrong, why everything I once leaned on was suddenly like ripped away from me. It felt as though the universe had stripped my life down to like nothing. And it left me alone with myself. And I had no clear instructions on what to do. All I had was my inner voice. And only later did I begin to understand that this was not abandonment, but this was actually myself aligning. Um, what felt like isolation was actually an invitation to me, for me to stop running, to stop listening outward, and to finally sit still long enough to hear the voice within me that had been speaking or trying to speak all along. And I'm not going to lie, at first, when all of this happened, I resisted the stillness. I was going crazy in my own thoughts. I tried to rebuild what was taken from me. I searched for replacements. I searched for old identities, new connections, new directions, new distractions, anything that might return life to what it once was for me. But every time that I attempted to do this, I kid you not, that door got slammed in my face. Conversations felt hollow. What once fit no longer did. All of the identities that I tried desperately to cling onto no longer fit. I tried to be the perfect wife. I tried to be the perfect mother. I tried to be who I thought I was supposed to be. Self-sacrificing, endlessly accommodating, having to dumb myself down just to have a conversation with someone. And the list goes on. I tried to survive by shrinking myself, by trying to please others and what role they wanted me to play. and I tried to hold everything together, but none of that was who I truly was. And eventually, when all that crumbled, there was nowhere left to go but inward. And in that inward turning, I began to notice something subtle but steady, an inner voice that did not rush me or demand anything from me. It did not shame me for my past or threaten me with the future, even though I was bombarded with a lot of guilt and shame when all of this first happened. But that small inner voice, um, you know, it just helped me simply to observe. It clarified, it pointed gently but firmly toward what was no longer aligned and what had never truly been mine to carry. This voice asked me to slow down, to sit with discomfort instead of outrunning it or trying to cover it up with some addiction, to examine the patterns I had repeated over and over and over. And you know what insanity is, doing the same thing over and over and over. It's what a majority of people do. It's insanity. And it showed me the attachments that I had clung to and the versions of myself I had outgrown, but yet I had not fully released them. So isolation removed the mirrors I had used to define myself. Without constant feedback from others, without roles to perform or expectations to meet, I was forced to meet myself honestly. Not the curated version, but the real one. Grieving, discerning, healing, and waking up to her own authority, her own divinity. And although I did have some dramatic points in between that time, this whole process was very quiet for me. It wasn't dramatic. I was doing it in isolation. A lot of people probably wondered where I went, but I was in an initiation process. And along that time, it was very painful for me in this process, but it was real and it's what my soul needed. And over time, the isolation began to feel less like exile and punishment, a sacred pause. It actually gave me time so my nervous system could settle and heal, where my body could exhale, where my intuition could finally come back online. In the absence of noise, I had immense clarity that finally came up for me. I didn't need validation from others. What I learned during this season for me is that consciousness does not evolve through accumulation. It doesn't, evolving your consciousness does not happen in noise. It happens in the quietness, and stillness, and isolation. We are not initiated by what we gain, but we are initiated by what we are willing to release. And I talked about this in my last video about making sacrifices. Change requires sacrifice. And, during the season for me, the universe was asking me to release not just people or circumstances, but like I said, identities, illusions, and ways of being that no longer matched who I was becoming. They were actually destroying me. So I tell you, if you are in a season of isolation, I want you to hear me clearly. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not being punished. You are not being forgotten. You are not failing at life or spirituality. You're not being betrayed. What you are experiencing is not regression. It is the refinement of your soul. And isolation often arrives for a person when the soul is ready to mature, when it is ready for initiation. When old patterns can no longer be sustained, when external validation no longer satisfies, when the nervous system is exhausted from living in survival mode and on repeated patterns, the quiet that follows can feel unbearable at first. I'm not going to lie, especially in a world that equates worth with productivity, visibility, and connection, and also validation. But the soul does not grow in constant motion. It grows in stillness. So if you're upon this season or if you're in this season, so this is teaching you discernment. It is showing you the difference between attachment and alignment, between noise and intuition, between loneliness that drains and solitude that restores. It is teaching you how to sit with yourself without collapsing, how to listen without needing immediate answers, how to trust your inner authority instead of outsourcing your knowing to others. Isolation is where you learn how to belong to yourself. It is the soul individuating. I read a lot of Carl Jung, and he even talks about all of this. And when that belonging takes root, something profound is able to happen. You stop reaching for what is not meant for you. You stop explaining yourself to those who cannot hear you, nor can they understand you. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy or chaos for connection. Your boundaries become clearer. Your energy becomes more contained. Your yes becomes sacred. Your no becomes sovereign. This is the unseen work of initiation. Now, there may come a time when you return to the world more visibly, and I'm slowly getting back into that, when new relationships, opportunities, and callings begin to appear. But you will not return as the same person who entered into the wilderness. You will return with sovereignty, with discernment, with self trust, and with an inner stillness that cannot be shaken by anything. So, isolation is not the ending, it is preparation, and it's also beginning. Um, so if this season has taken anything from you, know that it has not taken you. Okay. What is being asked of you now is not action, but your presence, your stillness, not certainty, but you listening. The path will not reveal itself through force or urgency, but through the steady remembering that occurs in silence and in isolation. One day, you will look back and see that what felt like isolation was the moment your life stopped pulling you outward and finally led you home to yourself. So, I wanted to close out this video with lyrics to a song that played at the end of Matrix Revolutions when Neo was fighting Agent Smith, who was really just a shadow aspect of Neo, but that's neither here nor there. But I wanted to close out this video with the lyrics to that song. So if you will. From delusion, lead me to truth. From darkness, lead me to light. From death, lead me to immortality. He who knows both knowledge and action, with action overcomes death, and with knowledge reaches immortality. In him are woven the sky and the earth, and all the regions of the air. And in him rests the mind and all the powers of life. Know him as the one and leave aside all other words. He is the bridge of immortality. Beyond the senses is the mind, and beyond the mind is reason, its essence. Beyond reason is the spirit in man, and beyond this is the spirit of the universe and the evolver of all. When the five senses and the mind are still and reason itself rests in silence, then begins the path supreme.